Get cool stuff for what you were going to do anyway. Drink beer. With Buy Beer, Get Gear from Labatt, you can just snap a photo of your receipt and upload it to the website to rack up points for exclusive merch. Get points for every purchase, whether you're grabbing a pint on draft, a case for a party, or a tall boy at the stadium. Any size, any product, anywhere you buy Labatt. Buy beer, get gear. Sign up now at rewards.labattusa.com.
This is entertainment. People pay to watch this.
Pass to a cutting Hiltz. He darts in.
Oh! People actually subscribe.
All across Central New York.
Time expired! Syracuse has done it!
It's Drive Time with your host, Tim Leonard.
Hey, guess what? I'm getting one, man!
We welcome you into Drive Time on a summer type of day in Central New York. Memorial Day weekend on the horizon, the official start of summer. And all is right in the world because Syracuse lacrosse is going to be playing on Memorial Day weekend. Second straight year the Orange are going to the Final Four. We'll talk a ton of lacrosse on the program today. Take your phone calls on a frustrating first half that led to a really impressive fourth quarter from the senior group. Huge win for the program, huge win for the legacy of that senior class, huge win for the legacy of Joey Spallina, getting it done again back on Long Island. And in the end, a 13-11 victory over UNC. Third time was the charm after losing to the Tar Heels the first two meetings. First time Syracuse men's lacrosse had ever played anyone three times in one season. And when it mattered most, coaching staff made some adjustments, and we'll get into my three big takeaways, I should say, from the game. We did the three big keys on Friday's show. Or I guess it wasn't Friday's show. It was Thursday's show. I left on Friday. Three big keys from Thursday's show. See if I can rattle them off and remember them all. It was win the goalie battle. Check to that one. Minimize Dominic Petramala. Check to that one. And, man, what was the third key I came up with? Oh, win the gray areas. I would say check to that one as well because they won the ground ball battle. Now, certainly some of winning the ground ball battle was John Mullen playing amazing in the first half. Mullen won tons of faceoffs right out of the front against Brady Wambach in the first half. Scored 2 goals, won 9 of the first 12 faceoffs, and ended up winning one more faceoff than Brady Wambach of Carolina in the end, which was a very impressive performance from the junior John Mullen. He is playing his best lacrosse of the season at the right time. He's gotten healthy, and he is grooving right now. And Jimmy McCool certainly was a big part of the win as well. Maybe gets lost somewhat. That's a tough place for goalies, and it's really haunted goalies, that venue at Hofstra, which is an awesome venue for a quarterfinal game. Great crowd. I think Joey Spallina probably had, 100, 110 people there rooting him on, family and friends, and another really cool moment for him and that entire Syracuse lacrosse team that has a lot of Long Island players on the roster. They were able to get the win, and they are moving on to play Notre Dame. That game is slated for a 2:30 start on Saturday. If you win that, you play in the championship game on Memorial Day, Monday at 1 p.m. Syracuse, of course, lost in this upcoming game, the semifinal game last year to Maryland. Now they draw a Notre Dame team that is pretty similar stylistically to the Maryland team that got them last year. And as Joey Spallina said in the press conference after the game on Saturday, he said, I thought we were a little just fat and happy to be there last year. Now we understand that the job is not done. And that's me paraphrasing him a little bit. But this go around, they're seniors. They got that taste of it last year. I'm sure they will learn from it. And it's going to be a tough matchup against Notre Dame. And it's going to test Syracuse in terms of trying to limit mistakes. And they do have to be smarter with possession for sure. And we can certainly get into my takeaways from the game, your takeaways via the phone lines at 315-437-7644. That's 4ESPN44. Your takeaways on the Q Sports Talk chat as well are welcome. We'll answer your questions during the break, and you don't even really get a break if you're watching us on QSportsTalk.com. You can pull that up on your phone, your iPad, your laptop, wherever you are. If you are on the go, if you're out of our radio range, if you're listening out of state, we welcome you on QSportsTalk.com or on our YouTube page, which is Q Sports Talk on the YouTube as well. And we've got a live chat up and running on our YouTube page for all of our shows now as well. So let's get into it with my Burdick BMW of Cicero and Burdick Toyota opening drive, where we go over the three big takeaways I had from the Orange getting it done on the island, winning in a Game 3 meeting against UNC and advancing to their second straight Final Four.
Number 1.
First takeaway is the veteran players for Syracuse, the senior class, the upperclassmen. They stepped up when it mattered most. It was sloppy through the first three quarters. Sloppy really for both sides. Carolina was not a team that avoided turnovers much in this game either. I mean, they had 15 turnovers themselves, and I think the field played a factor. Certainly, there was a lot of slippage. It changed the flow of the game. It changed your ability to dodge or be a hard dodger, which maybe played into Syracuse's hands a little bit. And the turnover count was high, and the stakes were high, and the pressure was as high as it gets. And when it came time to that fourth quarter, and when it came down to the final 8-9 minutes of that game, I thought Syracuse played essentially a flawless final 7 or 8 minutes after a very injury-riddled first 3.5 quarters or so of the game. And say what you want, it's frustrating at times that they make mistakes and they do things that I think get a little overblown. I don't think Syracuse is unique in a sport that is filled with a lot of up and down action, and there's a lot of mistakes and turnovers. And if you watch the other games this weekend, and if you watch the other games in the first round, a lot of teams are fighting the turnover bug this time of year because it's a pressure-packed time of the year. And I certainly think Syracuse needs to clean it up going forward, but they really made the pressure-packed plays when it mattered. And Joey Spallina in particular just said, I'm 22 and I'm going to show you. And he took over on that big stage again. And the swagger to do that in front of all of your family and friends, to score 3 goals in the second half, 2 goals in the fourth quarter. I hit on this on Orange Nation, but the last 6 goals of the game for Syracuse came from their senior class. Michael Leo scores goal number 8. Finn Thompson scores goal number 9. You had Luke Roa open the fourth quarter with a beautiful dodge to his left hand. Roa's so tough to defend his shot. It's just so tough to gauge when he's going to shoot it. Has such a unique and very impressive shot with both hands. And he went left-handed into the upper left corner of the cage, I believe it was. And that was the 10th goal at the start of the fourth quarter. You had Joey Spallina score that unbelievable goal in transition after Billy Juan did step on the end line, but you can't review it. Got away with one there. Billy Juan makes a hero play, saves it, gets it to Dante Bowen. Dante finds his Canadian box lacrosse teammate and teammate at Syracuse, of course, and Joey Spallina. He scores in transition. Finn Thompson scores one by the crease to make it 12-10, and then Joey's goal as the shot clock was going down around a couple players that were screening the goalie, Kent Good, was so crafty and so Joey Spallina. So give it up for this senior class because their legacy was on the line. There was a lot to lose in that game. There was a lot of pressure on those guys, as there is every single time you wear a Syracuse lacrosse jersey. And we've talked a lot about Joey Spallina's legacy, and now you go into this Memorial Day weekend, and he's definitely one of the last man standing here, one of the last couple of guys standing that is a Tewaaraton finalist. And it probably feels like, I mean, Nate Kabiri had kind of an off game in the quarterfinal round where he had 4 turnovers, and he was up against Alex Ross, one of the best defenders in the country for Penn State. But Kabiri is known for not turning the ball over, only 14 on the year going into that game, had 4 in the quarterfinal round. It feels kind of like we're looking at a Sean Light, Joey Spallina battle once again, which is always fun anytime these two square off, and it feels like that game might decide the Tewaaraton Award. And I would say Joey has if anything, in my mind, exceeded expectations to this point in his career at Syracuse. Because, yes, those expectations were incredibly lofty, but what he has done as just a leader of the community, leader of this team, the way that he signs autographs for hours after games, I think he should be applauded. And he has maximized his potential to the nth degree. He's someone that gets everything out of what he has. And that goal at the end of the game was another Joey Spallina moment, wearing the number 22 jersey, bringing Syracuse back to the Final Four.
Number 2.
Second takeaway from the win over UNC. And keep in mind, this was the third time Syracuse played UNC. First time around, didn't go well. They frankly were not really in that game very much down in Chapel Hill. Second time around, they made adjustments. The coaching staff did make some nice adjustments. They were right in the game, leading the game, probably should have won, made some mistakes late, didn't win. Third time around, you make more adjustments and you get it done. So let's give it up for the Syracuse coaching staff. And in particular, I thought Coach O deserves more credit than maybe he got for going zone at the end of that game. The situation where UNC scores a goal very quickly on an out-of-timeout play. They call one with 2:30 left in the game. They score with 2:10 left. They cut it to a 2-goal game. They cut another timeout, their final one, with 1:50 left in the game. And Coach O'Derna is known somewhat in previous years, more so than this year, for going zone in that type of situation because he has the numbers that back up that is a good time to do it. And he does the research, he knows the data, and he understands that throwing out zone there can throw a wrinkle and disrupt what the play call is from the opposite coaching staff. And it did just that. It was a gutsy time to do it. The season was on the line. Syracuse has not played much zone this year. Really, the only other time was against Carolina in the ACC tournament. They go to that zone wrinkle, which takes a lot of trust from the entire coaching staff and Coach O, the defensive coordinator, and his players, that they are fully prepared, and they do have that in their back pocket, ready to go and ready to execute it. It takes a lot of trust in your goalie, Jimmy McCool, who's going to see some shots when you go to that look. And it was a chess move that paid off and deserves a ton of credit. The UNC coaching staff was flummoxed by it. They thought that they were going to just go to their next set play and it was going to work beautifully and they were going to cut it to a 1-goal game. And the decision to go zone there was very Coach O, and it was very impressive and just very well executed. And it deserves a lot of credit. And frankly, I think Coach O is just someone that is so smart on the defensive side of the ball. And this series against UNC really showcased that. Dominic Petromala scores 6 goals against the Orange last year when Owen Duffy was banged up in the regular season meeting last year against Syracuse. Dominic Petromala scores 5 goals on 10 shots in the regular season meeting, and UNC's offense carved up Syracuse's defense in the regular season meeting. Second time around this year, Petro limited to 1 goal. They put Jordan Beck on him. They do a nice job. This time around, Petro limited to 1 goal. 2 goals combined in the last 2 games against the best shooter in the country and a guy that just put up 10 goals in the first round against UAlbany. That's good coaching. That's good adjustments to get more out of that matchup. And you look at what they did in the second half. Louis D'Agostino is a guy that they were expecting to start as the third close defender at the beginning of the year. He's had a hamstring injury much of the year. He started to play a little bit here and there. He started to replace Jordan Beck occasionally in second halves here or there. They made that adjustment in the second half where they put D'Agostino out there. They put him on Owen Duffy, which Carolina, I did not think was as effective offensively when Owen Duffy was in the game because he wasn't 100%. And I give a ton of credit to Owen Duffy for gutting it out and playing, and he's a remarkable player. But I think Paul Carcaterra said it during the build-up to the game, and he was spot on when he said that you would almost rather have Owen Duffy in the game. Their best stretches offensively came when he was on the exercise bike and not in the game, which was the second quarter and most of the third quarter, with the exception of the man-up series at the start of the second half. They did play him for that. Well, they went back to him in the fourth quarter, and Syracuse went to Louis D'Agostino to guard him. Riley Figueres was on Petro. The matchups were very smart all game long, and I just thought Syracuse's defensive coordinator, John O'Derna, outcoached the UNC offensive coordinator. UNC's really, really talented. They had 28 scholarships to play with this year compared to 12.6 for Syracuse. They're deeper. They beat the Orange by 5 goals in the regular season meeting, and it did not seem like Syracuse really had the talent to stay with them. This time around, they got the goalie play that we typically see from Jimmy McCool for the first time in this series this year. John Mullen was unbelievable. He kept the team in it in the first half. The way he's adjusted to Brady Wambach is a huge part of the story. And you look at the 4 teams left now, they've all gotten good face-off play to great face-off play, really. And they've all gotten good goalie play in this tournament. And that is always critical, and it's especially critical in a year where there's not a huge drop-off talent-wise from 1 to 10 or 1 to 12 in this field. And Syracuse now sits in a position where, yes, they have to clean things up. Yes, they had some mistakes. But I think the coaching staff does not get enough credit. I would put Pat March and John O'Derna right up there with any other assistants in the country. Syracuse made some adjustments offensively. They got some transition goals. UNC's number one thing on their game plan was prevent transition. And the Orange got a lot of unsettled goals, which was critical in their game plan. So sure, Syracuse has to clean some things up. It wasn't the prettiest game ever. A lacrosse game is never going to be without mistakes. But the last 7-8 minutes, they buckled down and they played great. And I think we need to be a little bit more grateful for what Syracuse has right now. They're going back to the Final Four for the second straight year. No one else in the country can say that. Only 3 teams have made it to the quarterfinals 3 straight years. Now, they've got a tough matchup against Notre Dame. Notre Dame's trying to win it all for the 3rd time in the last 4 years. They're trying to prove that they are the dynasty of this era. And it's really tough to get to the Final Four in this era because the parity in the sport is way different than it was 20, 30 years ago. So while Syracuse didn't play a perfect game, no one's saying that. No one's suggesting that. And obviously, they're going to have to play really well against Notre Dame to keep this thing going. They're going to have to play really well in the championship game against either Princeton or Duke if they get there to win it all. They should be applauded for doing something that no one has done in the sport in the last 2 years, and that's go to the Final Four in back-to-back years. And we'll get into my third takeaway after we take a time out here on Drive Time. We can have the conversation, certainly, of would this season be a success if they lose to Notre Dame? Is making the Final Four worthy of a successful tenure for this senior class? Or do they have to win the national championship? Do they have to win a game in the Final Four and get to the national championship game to really see progress from last year? We'll have that conversation at some point. We'll welcome your phone calls, of course, at 315-437-7644. We'll get to my third takeaway from the game and more thoughts from Syracuse taking down UNC on the island 13-11 and advancing to the Final Four for the second straight year. You're listening to Drive Time on ESPN Radio and watching it on QSportsTalk.com. Yeah, Anderson has had some good games, Craig, against Notre Dame. He's gotten that inside roll a couple times against them. You're right. Anderson had an off game. I would say him and Leo were the only 2 that really had off games offensively. And that could be a good deal because of the field. I don't think that field condition favored UNC, and I don't think it favored Leo's one of their harder dodgers. A lot of his dodges are herky-jerky, stop-and-start stuff, and you couldn't really do that on that field. Yeah, Joe, I'm not saying that game on Saturday was too many turnovers. I just think it's gotten overblown because they're actually the best team remaining in the field. Like going into the weekend, I mean, they've ranked top 10 in the country in turnovers per game the last 4 years. So it's the type of turnovers. We've always said that. And they had too many unnecessary ones. And if they repeat that, they're probably going to lose to Notre Dame, no doubt. But I just think it's a little crazy to say, the coaching staff should be on the hot seat, or this team turns it over, and if you had a different coach, it would go way better. It's also just part of their style. That's Syracuse lacrosse, and that's why a lot of the recruits or top players in high school want to come to Syracuse to play that fun style. So there's a give and a take. Yeah, D'Agostino had a hamstring injury. He probably missed the first. I think he returned. I'd have to go through. I think his first game back was on that West Coast trip, or maybe it was the game after that when they played Hopkins. Was it Hopkins after that, I think? Terrible turf, yeah. That was disappointing. Yeah, best lax IQ in the game. Him and Owen Hiltz have been two of the better ones in recent memory. Yeah, ND always schedules less. Lame. It's hard to say Gavino on the easiest path. I mean, Syracuse probably has the toughest path playing Notre Dame. Thanks, Theo, for listening on the call. Thanks, Gavendo. Yeah, big weekend for the Orange and the Pros NLL Championship. Yeah, revenge tour would be interesting. If they could get Princeton again, that would be... I said that going into the quarterfinals, that's the dream championship game for nostalgia of the 90s and the history, and then the quarterfinal game last year was epic. I agree, Phil. Good way to put it. Players will not be happy without a championship. It's hard to call Duke a Cinderella. They're more talented than Syracuse probably, but they haven't done it this year. They could make a strong case they shouldn't have been in the tournament. Thanks, Jen. Appreciate that. Love hearing when people do that. I think we're leaving Thursday, but as you guys might have heard Gary say on Gomez this morning, they have not figured out yet exactly travel plans.
AM and 1440 AM. ESPN 97.7 and 100.1. Watch live on QSportsTalk.com.
Welcome back into Drive Time on a hot Monday afternoon in central New York. We just can't get any 70-degree days. It's always 90 degrees or 50 degrees now. I guess we shouldn't complain that the weather is sunny and warm, especially in central New York, but good to have Memorial Day weekend on the horizon. Looks like it might be a little rainy as of right now. That's the early forecast for Saturday's game from Charlottesville, which is the Plan B hosting site, basically, because of the World Cup taking up all the typical venues for the championship weekend of men's lacrosse. But game will be 2:30 slated to start Saturday. There's a game before it at noon. Probably won't get going officially until 3 p.m. Saturday from Charlottesville. It is at the football stadium. That is a grass field, and we'll see if the field, the turf, the whole discussion around that becomes more of a discussion as we progress with the week. Gary Gate did say on Gomez earlier this week that he plans to have his team do some drills on the grass fields outside their practice facility, but not necessarily practice fully on the grass fields because you want to conserve energy. And when you make a switch from turf to grass, it does take up a lot more energy on your body just playing on a grass field. So they're balancing that line of conserving energy, But obviously, they want to get acclimated with scooping up ground balls, and the goalies want to get acclimated with seeing a bounce shot on a grass field, things like that. And I'm sure that they will do just that this week, like every team will do as they plan to head to Charlottesville for that Saturday game. Let's go to the phone lines right now. If you'd like to give us a call, you can at 315-437-7644. We're going to go to our guy, Dave in Utica, who always wants to talk lacrosse. What's up, Dave?
Good afternoon, Tim. Thanks again for taking the call.
Of course. What'd you make of the game?
First off, I enjoyed the call very much. I always do. I like your calls on the game. So
Appreciate that.
Basketball. Oh, yeah. Well, the over and under on Kyle's woos, I think we're at 14. If he had 13, he would be wrong for the score because he added the extra woo during postgame, which I liked, the exclamation point. So
we even got the rare backup woo. I don't know if you noticed that one, Dave, but in the
I don't know if I caught that one.
The man-up situation at a halftime, that was a critical moment in the game. I mean, UNC's up 1, and they're coming out 2 men up for 18 seconds. They took a shot and did not have the backup. And
That's correct. Yes.
Big miss by them, and Kyle wooed the backup, the race to the end line, which that's when you know it's a big game.
Right, and we got to commend Coach O because he definitely outcoached North Carolina.
Yeah, I agree with you. Totally.
You know what I mean? I mean, it was just a different scene. I have to say this, though, Tim, with Syracuse. They're going as far as Johnny Mullen. Because Johnny, he just needs confidence. He's got all the tools. He needs confidence. 29 ground balls for 2 games.
Yeah.
Which is unsurprising. No one's going to match that. If we get half that, Tim, for Notre Dame, do we win?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a big category. It's always a big category. I think that the biggest takeaway I have from 29 ground balls for him is that means he's winning a lot of face-offs to himself, winning them cleanly, right?
That's what I was getting at,
yeah. And absolutely. I know you are. And that's, he's on the whistle, and he has violated, I think, 3 times in each of the last 2 games, but given the amount of face-offs he's taken, that's less than what he was doing in the regular season. And a couple people asked me, like, why did Mullen not have more goals during the season? Just the way that he shot it. Well, what happens in a scenario like going against UNC, where it's the number 1 faceoff guy in the country, their wingers are never going to be in a defensive posture because they hardly ever see Brady Wambach get dusted out of the front. And if you're going against a team where John Mullen is better than their faceoff guy, then they're ready to slide to him. They have more of a game plan for when he does win those faceoffs going forward into the offensive box by himself. So certainly, it caught UNC off guard because that just doesn't happen to Brady Wambach.
No.
Really, the only other time it's happened is actually when they played Notre Dame, and Spano surprisingly torched him in that matchup. So Notre Dame's got a good face-off guy, too.
Oh, I know. Yeah, because I was watching the highlights and all. Yeah, he's good. He's good. But I think the trouble ahead is Princeton. It's complete. But then again, we've seen him before, right?
Yeah.
We'll get him again, and time will tell. What was I going to get at? Oh, the Duke situation? If you put Syracuse where Duke was today, going in the tournament, would the committee accept Syracuse?
I mean, I would hope that they weren't giving any favoritism, if that's what you're hinting at.
No, I'm not getting at that. I'm just saying, just because you don't know when the hot team's going to appear in the tournament. That's why. Yeah.
This year, it just felt like, honestly, Maryland could have made a run to the Final Four. It felt like there were so many teams that were bunched together.
That's probably why, yeah.
Yeah, and it just made it easier for the last team in to look like the right call, and then they went on a run. And you feel bad for Richmond, honestly, because the drop-off from seed 3 to seed 4 was tremendous. I mean, UNC plays a UAlbany team that got smoked anytime they played anyone that was up above their level. And Richmond had to play a Duke team that's more talented than them, has more 5 stars, and obviously Duke is very dangerous right now. We're seeing that.
Right. And, my predictions for the bracket just blew apart anyway because I had Virginia and, look at Virginia today and stuff like that,
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. Lars Tiffany out today for anyone that missed that. And that was the one thing I got right. I think I got my entire bracket wrong, but that. It was just an impossible year to predict the bracket, which makes it fun, honestly.
But you owe an apology to the chat because someone had a certain news report about Lars Tiffany being on the bubble.
Yeah, you're right.
Right? That's what I'm saying.
I mean, they initially sort of disputed that, and then I was hearing this weekend, it sounds like he's out, and we find out today he's out. So you're right.
Well, no one wishes that upon anybody, you know.
No, and Lars is a great guy, so we hope he lands on his feet. But appreciate you checking in, Dave.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Dave in Utica, always kind enough to join us for some lacrosse talk here on the show. And he's right. It seemed like initially the guy on Twitter who was kind of spreading the news, I got on here last week and said something like, don't spread that news because that affects people, that affects families. And there was no statement from Virginia disputing that, and now here we find out today that he is out, which we'll get into that decision more as drive time progresses. Right now, let's go back to the phone lines. We've got John in Syracuse, who's next up. What's up, John?
Not much. I've been watching SU lacrosse for over 40 years, and I've loved it for years. And they've had ungodly talent forever up until the last few years. But they play playground lacrosse, and they used to get away with that over the years because of their ungodly talent. And you could win that way because you just out-talented everybody. I just don't see that happening anymore. I just can't see Gary Gate winning a national championship playing this kind of undisciplined lacrosse. It's a structured game now. And I hope Gary Gate makes me choke on my words.
Well, John, it's just hard for me to say that or agree with you when they are top 10 in the country the last 4 years in turnovers per game.
I agree with you on that, but I'm just saying to run the table and win the national championship today, I just don't think you can do it without structure in your lacrosse.
But why do you think they don't have structure? They for years, Syracuse, a trademark of Syracuse lacrosse has been they play a creative style. They're encouraged. If you come here, if you're one of the more talented players in the country, you're going to get to showcase your skill set with behind the backs, and that's part of the appeal. And that's why this town loves lacrosse. That's why lacrosse blew up, because Gary Gate showcased that side of the sport. So
I agree, but I don't think that kind of lacrosse will win you a national championship anymore. And I hope he proves me wrong. That's all I'm saying.
I guess I would say that there's plenty of teams in the last 10 years that have won with a style where they're turning it over about as much as Syracuse, and they're encouraging guys to have fun out there. And I don't think that Syracuse is an outlier when you watch the other teams in the country. There was one guy who tweeted at me and said, we need to hire Jeff Tambroni, or if we had Jeff Tambroni, then Syracuse would be much better and more disciplined. You watch Penn State, they turn the ball over 18 times per game. We're going crazy that Syracuse had 19 in one game. Penn State is ranking 60th in the country in turnovers per game and 55th in the country in clearing per game. So it's all across college lacrosse. All these teams play up and down now, and they turn the ball over a fair amount.
All right. Okay, well, we'll see what happens. Thank you.
Hopefully, John will call back in if they win it all and own up to his mistake, like I owned up to my mistake with the Virginia guy saying that Lars was out and Lars Tiffany is out today. I understand that some people are down on the style and it's frustrating to watch at times, but guys, they've been right there with all the best teams in the country. If they don't win the national championship, it does not require looking under the hood and saying we need to reevaluate the style of play. And no one was saying that when they were winning national championships year over year. No one had any issue with Paul Gate going behind his back from 50 yards to Gary Gate and going between his legs and doing all kinds of fun stuff when they were winning all the time. You can win with this style, and you can also bring in more people, and it brings in better recruits. There's something to it. It's part of the fabric of the program for 50 plus years. It's the creator's game. Syracuse leans into that more than any other program, and that's why it's blown up here in Central New York. So to say that they can't win with this style is kind of crazy when they made it to back-to-back Final Fours. Are they going to beat Notre Dame? Are they going to win it all this year? We'll see. I think they've got a pretty darn good chance. They're just like all the other teams that are still left, the 3 other teams left. It's anyone's game. It's wide open this year, and it's fun to be in a position where you're one of 4 teams standing for the second straight year. Let's go to DJ and Cicero. He's next up on Drive Time. Hey, DJ.
Hey, so I don't know if he was talking about no discipline or whatever, but obviously he hasn't been watching the games. There's plenty of discipline for this team, and I really feel as they're gonna run the rest of the way, and we're gonna get it and bring the championship back home to Syracuse. And sorry, John, if you're listening, but I think it's your bedtime.
All right, DJ. I appreciate the positivity. We get one perspective, we get the other perspective from DJ and Cicero. And it's just, I understand the turnovers in this last game were frustrating, but it shouldn't be the sole takeaway. I just think we need to take a step back and understand the accomplishment. Back-to-back Final Fours. If you get there with some frustrating plays, that kind of makes sense. It's a wide open year. They slayed the UNC Dragon. They made proper adjustments. They did a lot of things in that fourth quarter that should be applauded. And frankly, I just don't understand being upset or being down on Gary Gait based on the body of work that this program has put together under him. And I can't for the life of me understand thinking that the Syracuse coaching staff gets out-coached or that's an issue. Pat March and John O'Derna, ask anyone in the sport. They are right up there in terms of how they think about the sport, how they prepare. They're incredibly hard workers. Syracuse is in very good hands with a coaching staff that they have right now. And we should be grateful for Syracuse lacrosse being back in the national spotlight. 5-6 years ago, we were begging for them to get back to a Final Four. Here they are in back-to-back Final Fours. And it's fun to be in this conversation again, and it's fun to be nitpicking what they need to do to win a national championship game or get to the national championship game, but just don't lose sight or don't blow it out of proportion when you compare Syracuse to other schools. It's not as if turnovers is really a central issue. And keep in mind, they played the hardest schedule in the country, and they still rank about top 5 in the country the last 4 years in turnovers per game. They played a 10-man ride more than anyone. They see every team that throws out a 10-man ride this year in college lacrosse. It felt like they saw in their schedule. And their clearing is still kind of middle of the road. And I understand that in the last game, there were some head-scratching clears. But go watch the other games. I mean, Georgetown turned the ball over 1,000,000 times, and they did it in back-to-back games, and that's why they lost. Penn State turned the ball over 17 times, and they average 18 per game. So we're making a little bit too much of it, is my opinion. We'll get back to more phone calls, get to my third takeaway from the game. And Matt in Liverpool, hang on. We do have to hit a break. 315-437-7644 if you'd like to chime in on Drive Time. I was hoping there's so many Johns in Syracuse. I didn't realize it was going to be Angry John there. That I guess I should have expected after a game where they turned it over a lot. Someone was like, Tim's going to go off on him. I almost just didn't even have the energy. I held back a little. I just tried to reason with him, and he kind of just didn't give me much. Bowling ball, great point. I'll probably touch on that throughout the week, if not today. But the lack of depth is a big concern if they get to Memorial Day. They played their first midfield the entire second half, basically. That's very concerning that they have to do that. AJ, Angry John in the house. Yeah, that's right. I'm sure John has gotten on here and said they'd never make a Final Four. Now he's just changing the goalposts. Well said, bowling ball. Lacrosse is a hard game. Turnovers are part of it. Gated community playgrounds. That's a good one. Yeah, I agree with Joe Meehan in the YouTube chat. It's more the bad penalties than the turnovers. That's where they're lacking discipline. Almost every good team has showmanship players and plays, behind the back passes, etc. Well said. The penalties were more infuriating probably than the turnovers for me. And keep in mind that the field, I think I said it on air, the field contributes to the turnovers some, but the late hit from Jake Spallina, they just have a couple dumb penalties every game that drive you nuts. The other one, everyone was getting on the pass from Kittleberger. He only had 2 seconds to clear in that situation. Now, it was still a failed clear, and you can't have too many of those, but UNC is kind of known for inducing failed clears because they play a 10-man. And I don't think Notre Dame is going to throw out anything like that. So it should be a better game in the clearing process for Syracuse this week. But, on the Kittleberger pass, everyone was like making fun of him. Like, why'd he just chuck it down the field? He only had 2 seconds to get it across. He basically had no options. Like, the coaching staff is right there talking to him on the near sideline, and they're probably telling him, like, throw it downfield. Or you could make an argument in that situation he should have just taken a shot because maybe then they could get a backup. And the benefit was it wasn't a transition chance for UNC because he threw it downfield there. And he wasn't going to get across the line in 2 seconds with guys hounding him. So that was kind of the worst of a couple bad outcomes there. Next Lax game is Saturday, 2:30 in Charlottesville against Notre Dame in the Final Four. Yeah, the tough part with the gate conversation is, like, if you would have asked any Syracuse fan, hey, 2 Final Fours, they probably would have signed up for that. Now you get to the Final Four and people are saying, we would have been better off with someone else. I mean, it's like Lars Tiffany. He's a victim of his own success, really. Yeah, they were wrong then. If the TV crew said he had more than 2 seconds, they were wrong. We clearly saw it on the clock. And he wouldn't make that pass, and the coaching staff was telling him what to do. They were out of time, basically. Mount Rushmore of SU men's lax. I think you'd have to see a national championship from Joey to put him on that list. There's just so many greats. I mean, definitely Gary. Powell brothers have to be in consideration. That's a tough one. Welcome back into Drive Time. Tim Leonard with you, talking SU lacrosse this afternoon after making it to the Final Four for the second straight year. First time since 2008 and 2009, the Orange have gone to back-to-back Final Fours. They draw Notre Dame in the semifinal game, slated for a 2:30 start, second game of 2 on Saturday from Charlottesville, Virginia in the semifinal round. Going to be interesting to see if it's another year where that team that plays in the first game and gets a couple more hours of rest wins on Memorial Day. That's kind of how things have been trending. Syracuse is in the second game. Syracuse will pretty much always be in the second game because they're the biggest brand in the sport. Notre Dame right up there as well. I'm sure a lot of the fan bases that converge on Charlottesville will come from Syracuse and Notre Dame to fill out a good chunk of the crowd at Scott Stadium, which is a grass field where the Cuse will be playing on Saturday. They win that game. They play on Memorial Day Monday for the right to win their 12th national championship in program history. Would be their first one since 2009. Let's go back to the phone lines. We have Matt in Liverpool who has been waiting patiently. Hey, Matt.
Hey, how you doing tonight, King?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing good. Thanks for taking my call.
Absolutely. What's on your mind?
So, let's do men's lacrosse. I was at the game. It was actually 1 month ago today, back on April 18th. And obviously, we all know that Phyllis Molina broke the program's all-time career points record. And I'm just, going off of John's call. Again, I don't have any, we all have opinions. But fans were loving the behind-the-back shots. Like, fans were, feeding off of it. They were loving it, including myself. And my opinion, I think SU can and will win the national championship. I don't see any discipline issue. I don't have a problem, with John. I never met him. I can have my own opinion. But fans were loving the behind-the-back stuff. It makes them excited. They love to see that, including myself. So I think it brings more excitement and, more, fans in the seats and, more fans liking what they see, really.
Yeah, I think you're right, Matt. I appreciate you checking in. Good points all around from Matt in Liverpool. And John is always, he's known in the chat as Angry John for a reason. He always comes on here and he feels like he's always criticizing Gary Gait. And I think he initially said they'll never make a Final Four with Gary Gait. Now he's kind of moving the goalpost to they'll never win a national championship. And look, I'm not saying that you can't come on here and be down on the coaches or anything like that. And I just think there's a time and a place. And right now we have to be pretty excited about where the program is at. And we have to be grateful, I would say, that if you take where the program was before Gary Gait took the job to where it is now, I mean, if anything, we should be applauding the guy for getting Syracuse back to the Final Four in back-to-back seasons. And Gary's got a high standard. The way he handled the press conference after the game Saturday was sort of interesting. He said, we're relevant again. There's a lot of schools in the country that if they make the Final Four, like that keeps your job for years and years. And to say we're relevant again, I mean, making the Final Four is tough nowadays. So that is the barometer for a very successful season for a lot of programs. Not saying that it should be for Syracuse. And it's nice that we are raising the standard of the program again because of the job that Gary Gait has done. But in a way, he's kind of now a victim of his success because you take on this job at Syracuse and you understand that if you start winning, now the fans are going to expect you to win each and every year. And it's like the Lars Tiffany conversation. Lars Tiffany fired today from Virginia, or officially parting of ways. Virginia lacrosse was kind of struggling, to put it mildly, before Lars Tiffany got there. And he brought them back. And then after winning national championships, most recent in 2021, they've slipped up recently, and they've had a lot of talent, and they have not gotten it done in the last 2 years. And they put together an all-time sloppy game. If you think Syracuse was sloppy in their win over UNC, the Virginia game was a greatest hits of just bad play in the clearing game, offsides, tripping all over their own field that just wasn't in good condition, which falls on the coaching staff somewhat, in my opinion. It was a really talented Virginia roster, probably more talented than Syracuse from top to bottom. Younger than Syracuse, but probably more talented from top to bottom the last 2 years, and they have not won an NCAA tournament game. And they're moving on from Lars Tiffany because he is kind of a victim of his own success. And Lars Tiffany is a really good coach. There's a lot of really good coaches that probably get fired in every sport. I mean, we know that, and it's unfortunate. You feel for him, and I don't think anyone should be happy or anyone should take that as good news or anything like that, and we'll see who they hire from here. It's going to be very interesting who Virginia hires. But you look at what Syracuse has done under Gary Gait, and the conversation is an interesting one this year of, is it a successful season if they lose this next game? The players would tell you no. The players really understand that this is their last go-around when you're talking about the senior class, and this is their last chance for a little bit, probably to win a national championship. And I do think that it's right to be bummed if they don't get to that ultimate goal. But getting to the Final Four, you can't call the season a failure. There's no way that we look back on this senior year, on the senior classes tenure or time at Syracuse 5-10 years from now and think they underwhelmed. Getting to 2 Final Fours was pretty much exactly what you were hoping for, and that was best case scenario. I don't really see a world where they got there their sophomore year. Now, they were in the quarterfinals, and they were right in that game, but again, it's just cool to see the progression where now they're 6-2 this year in games decided by 2 goals or less. So that shows you it's a senior-laden group that makes winning plays, and we saw their experience versus UNC's experience, and I think that ultimately decided the game on Saturday, because the fourth quarter, it turned into your stars scoring goals. You're not going to get as much production from freshmen and sophomores and second midfield line, etc., when you get into the fourth quarter in a game of that magnitude. It was Petro and Duffy scoring for Carolina in the fourth quarter, and it was Luke Roa, Finn Thompson, and Joey Spallina for Syracuse. Those are 3 PLL draft picks, and those are 3 veteran leaders that really stepped up on the biggest stage of the season so far, and we'll see what they have in the Final Four game. We'll take our final timeout. We can work in one more phone call if you'd like at 315-437-7644. I've got one more takeaway from the game to get to, and also we'll work in some other thoughts on just lacrosse as a whole and what to expect this weekend as they make the trek to Charlottesville. You're listening to Drive Time on ESPN Radio and QSportsTalk.com. Yeah, Paul Gate should be on the Mount Rushmore too, probably, Tronic. Tom Marichek, underrated. Tim Nelson, underrated. Nelson and Zolberti probably remind you the most, or Joey Spallina probably reminds you the most of Nelson and Zolberti from a passing standpoint. There's just too many. I don't even know how you'd come up with a Mount Rushmore, but that's a testament to the program. Yeah, Joey's made the comparison of Syracuse is kind of like the Yankees because they haven't won since 2009. Yeah. They're going to step up their game, it sounds like, Joe, in the scholarship category next year. Wish they would have done it a year earlier because that might make the difference on winning a national championship. But you're right. Coaching staff, I mean, UNC, in theory, really should win that game. They have 28 scholarships. Syracuse has 12.6. I think they have more talent. But you could also say UNC didn't have their best player, which, I mean, they basically didn't. Like, he scored a goal, but that definitely hurt them. But if there were radio shows in Chapel Hill right now, which, I mean, I know there are radio shows, but I don't know how much they're talking about UNC and Joe Bresci. I think you could criticize a lot of how UNC coached that game. I don't think their goalie switch was the right move. I mean, a lot of people said that. Quint Kesnick said that before the game. I just don't think turning to a guy who has never made a start in the playoffs to make his first 2 starts, like putting him in that stage. I mean, in the second half, he wasn't that good for UNC. And I understand it's a tough situation with Duffy where he's gutting it out and he probably wants to like be a warrior and play and show the team that he's still like putting it all on the line for them. But I just didn't like their process of rotating the third attacker throughout the game. I don't think you can get into much of a flow there, and I thought they were better without Duffy in the game. And I also think they probably should have bumped Anthony Rayo down to attack. Or up to attack, depending on how you look at it. No, Kev, I would sort of reiterate what Mike McAllister said. My intel is that it's an international player for sure. I think he's from Mexico, is what I'm hearing. But I hope we find out officially soon. It seems like they've had him wrapped up for about a week plus. But I think it just depends with international players, you know, the timelines. You got to make sure everything's all good before you officially drop it. It would be a Mount Rushmore with 32 heads, yeah. Yeah, Joe Filardi will be a significant contributor next year. He played on man down in the game. He's got a bright future. He's been hurt, and he has to kind of get up to the speed of the game. I think he's been in a tough situation where he was hurt in high school, then he didn't play much. Didn't play with the team in the fall, so that's tough. But he's a good recruit. Talented player. He'll be fun to watch, too. He's a goal scorer as an LSM.
Watch your favorite ESPN Syracuse sports talk shows on QSports.com.
Final segment this afternoon on Drive Time. Plan is to have Drive Time the next 2 days. Then I'm traveling down to Charlottesville for the lacrosse Final Four. Game will be Saturday. You can listen to it on TK99, Syracuse Sports Network from Learfield. We'll have the pregame get rolling at 2, and it'll probably be a long pregame like it was in the quarterfinal round, as I would imagine the start of the game will be closer to 3 p.m. than 2:30. So if you have any thoughts on lacrosse, we'll talk a good amount of lacrosse on this show the next 2 days. We welcome your phone calls, as always, from 5 to 6 p.m. on Drive Time. Little Yankees update for you, brought to you by the Wildcat Sports Pub in Camillus. The Yankees had a tough weekend. They were set to beat the Mets in the Subway Series. First time it would have been a series victory against the Mets at Citi Field, so on the road since 2018, if they would have won Game 3, the rubber match yesterday. And David Bednar blew the save when the Mets turned to a pinch hitter, hitting 188 on the year, and he had a game-tying 3-run homer in the 9th inning. They won the game in extras. Yankees just never seem to win games in extra innings. I don't really agree with their strategy of the 5 infielder thing. They especially lose games when they're the road team in extra innings. They've been the worst team in Major League Baseball since they've gone to that rule change of the ghost runner at winning games as the road team in extra innings. Their overall record is the worst compared to other teams in the sport. So that's our Yankees update. They've got the Blue Jays, who are struggling for 4 in a row. It's actually Patrick Corbin on the bump tonight, CNS product against the Yankees. So we'll keep you updated on the Yankees each and every time we hit our airwaves here on Drive Time, and that's always brought to you by the Wildcat Sports Pub in Camillus. One final thought on lacrosse. So the national championship odds are out, and Notre Dame is the favorite, plus 175. Princeton is plus 180. Those numbers mean that if you put $10 on Notre Dame to win the national championship, you would make $17.50. You'd make $18 on Princeton. So Notre Dame's slight favorites over Princeton. Duke is third on the list of 4 teams, plus 430. And Syracuse is plus 500. If you want to bet the Orange right now to win the national championship on FanDuel, you put down $10, you'd make $50. Put down $100, you'd make $500. So they have the worst odds of the 4 teams remaining, which might be a little surprising at first glance. But this kind of gets back to the conversation that I've been having throughout the year, which is that the local perception might be the stars are aligned. This is the Syracuse team that is uber talented, way more talented than everyone. If they just don't shoot themselves in the foot, they're going to win it all. The national perception is not that. This team is now in a group of 4 teams left that are all talented, that all have good face-off play, all have good goalie play. And you can make a strong case that Syracuse is not as talented as Duke. Notre Dame is a unique team where I will say they have probably one of the best coaches in the sport right now, and they remind you a little bit in why they are winning as to why John Tillman and Maryland have been winning. So it's going to be a juicy matchup from that standpoint, because it is kind of a a repeat of what happened in the semifinal game last year. Notre Dame's defense is outstanding. Syracuse scored 8 goals in the first half in the regular season meeting, and that was the most goals Notre Dame has given up in a half this season. The Orange played bad in the second half, and that game got away from them. 16-11 was the final of that one in the regular season, which is misleading, if anything, because Syracuse was down by a goal with about 10 minutes remaining. So they were right in the game. They led at halftime. And if you remember, Max Buzenkill scored on an empty net in front of Joey Spallina, and there was some bad blood there at the end of that game. So that'll be something that's kind of interesting to monitor. These two teams, of course, do not like each other very much, and it's another ACC revenge tour type of game for Syracuse. Before we wrap up the show, let's go to Mike in Mattydale, who is next up on Drive Time. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Tim, real quick. We talked last week. I just want to thank you again for the calls on lacrosse games. Man, you do an awesome job. And, go SU lacrosse this coming weekend. It's going to be an awesome tournament. And thank you and keep up the good work.
All right, I appreciate it, Mike. Hopefully we'll get a national championship woo this weekend. And
I know Polly was saying something about you today. I was driving around work and I listened to the daytime show.
Yeah.
And I was saying that, people don't like to listen to you. And I'm like going, what is wrong with you?
He's just joking. He's only just making a, he's, you know Polly. So.
Yeah, I heard you had a San Diego hat on today.
Oh, of course. It's the sun came up today, so of course he had a Padres hat on. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. Yep. Mike is another kind listener, and we appreciate all of you guys who have been listening on the radio side of things. And I always say it's fun for me whenever I am watching the Syracuse sports that I'm not calling to sync up the radio call to the TV. And it's a fun way to consume it because you're getting the hometown call. You're getting the announcers that really know the ins and outs of the team. So keep that in mind if you're watching an NBA team, if you're watching a team that's not a Syracuse sports team, and keep it in mind if you're thinking about watching the lacrosse game this weekend. Kyle is always wooing anytime they score, so you'll get a little extra motivation, a little extra juice anytime there's a goal. It might wake you up a little bit. It takes a little bit to get used to, but we appreciate all of you that do consume the games that way and sync up the radio call to the TV. The other thing to note before we wrap up, and I'll talk more lacrosse on the show tomorrow, of course, one of the things that concerns you about Syracuse in getting it done in 2 games in 3 days is the drop-off they experience when they go to their second midfield line. Because it's a very quick turnaround to win that game on Monday on very limited rest. And yes, Syracuse won a game earlier this year against Penn on the road, second game in 3 days, and they've had some experience in this spot. They won the ACC championship last year, but they had a deeper team last year. They got more out of their second midfield line last year than they have this year. And some of you may have noticed this, and we hit on it quite a bit on the radio broadcast during the second half, but the second midfield line did not play hardly at all, and I don't really even remember them playing at all in the second half. And Bogan did score in the first half. That was his first goal since March 28th. The ACC opener against Duke, who is a team they could see in the national championship game. They played all of these teams remaining. They lost to Princeton, beat Duke, lost to Notre Dame, of course. In the next game, they are playing the Irish. They have not gotten a goal from Matt McEntee since March 28th. Tucker Kellogg did score in the first round, but they have gotten very limited production from their second midfield line. And the obvious call, unfortunately, in the second half of that game against UNC was because it's survive in advance, you've just got to ride your first midfield line the entire time. And they did that. And those guys are going to be tired because they played a ton of minutes and they were running around all over that slippery field. So it's going to be interesting how they monitor the second midfield line, how much they play them in the Saturday game, because yes, you got to get through Saturday to get to Monday, but the recovery is going to be challenging on Syracuse's first midfield line more than another first midfield line because they have had to play more minutes and they just have not gotten enough production from their deeper offensive options. So if they can find something from that second midfield line, that would go a long way come Memorial Day weekend. And that is certainly a weakness of the team right now. That's going to wrap things up on Drive Time. Thanks to all of you for listening, or if you watched us on QSportsTalk.com or on our YouTube page at Q Sports Talk. We'll be back tomorrow, 5 to 6 p.m., talking more lacrosse, taking your phone calls, and we'll see if Syracuse basketball adds a new player to their roster. We had Mike McAllister on earlier today. He was teasing maybe an international player. I've been hearing the same thing. So we will see if an international player is added to the roster this week, and we will keep you abreast of everything that's going on around Syracuse sports. Until then, thanks for listening on ESPN Radio, and thanks for watching us on QSportsTalk.com.
This is